All right, so let's look at the features or the sort of the skills necessary to do the advanced to do. We want to create a variable that stores the name of the last button pressed. When a button is pressed, use console.log to output a sentence naming the last button pressed and then the current button pressed. And then we want to upload to a web server and turn in the URL and the HTML file. So what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to show you how to, well, you're actually already, we did that over here. We created a variable that stores the name of the last button pressed. Or did we? So we got to think about that. This one is going to be tricky because we have to do a couple things. One, we have to talk about how you can put two variables together to get a new value, two strings together, what we call concatenation. And we'll talk about strings a lot more because strings are what we do a lot of in JavaScript. So we'll talk about that as the semester goes on, but we're going to do something right now so you can at least muddle through this part. And, I'll show you how to upload to web server again, but there's a video for that already, so maybe I won't. Okay, so let's talk about creating a variable that stores the name of the last button pressed. Of course, to do this, I'm probably going to need a couple extra buttons. Okay. Now, I'm going to change all of the IDs. Oops, 003. It's like James Bond there. All right, so I now have 3 buttons. And of course, they all do the same thing because they're just copies and pastes of the other ones, but they do all have different IDs, and they don't actually have different names though. So as I said in the homework, you can use the name or ID of the current button press, and that's going to be an important factor in what I think we have to do for this. All right, so I'm going to drop these names just for now. I don't have anything against them. And then rename these to ClickMe01, ClickMe02, and ClickMe03. Save it, and let's set ourselves up. Yep, there they are. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's actually a lot easier than you're probably expecting it to be, because we have to do a couple things, and we have to go over a little bit of something about objects, something about functions, but it'll all fit in the model that we've been working with so far. Okay. So I have my function. And I have my ID. I deleted the name because I thought that was best for what we were about to embark on. And one thing about functions is that I think in class someone asked, why do we always have these parentheses? Well, it's because right now the parentheses have been blank because the parentheses don't do anything. But what's interesting is that we can put something in here called a parameter. And a parameter is essentially some type of variable. So in this case, I might want to, and let's think through the problem before we do anything else. I want to display the ID of the button or the name. In this case, we want to go with the ID, and we're probably going to use ID for the rest of the semester. I want to display the ID of the button. So I'm going to put a variable here, and I'm not going to put let. I'm just going to put the ID. Now that means that my function is looking for a parameter. You can see the word parameter there, called the ID. So when I call my function, I really need to put something in there. If I don't put something in there, I get an error like this. Nothing. It's null. It's actually null. It's not an error. It's just a null because I didn't define it, which is weird. It actually should have given me an error. And I changed these to 0, 1, 0, 2. I definitely did some undos while I looked away. All right. So what if I did my function, the ID is button 0, 1. Will this work? Let's find out. It did not. Why do you think it doesn't work? I want you to think about this for a second. I passed a parameter to here, and it went through. Do you see what I did wrong? There was something I definitely did wrong. If you said, Greg, you didn't put this into quotes, I would tell you, you're right. I didn't put it into quotes. So let's go ahead and put that into single quote. Why am I putting it in a single quote and not double quote? Because it already has a double quote. Double quote. And if I put another double quote there, it would all mess everything up. So if you have a long thing in double quotes, you need to use single quotes inside or vice versa. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to refresh it. I'm going to click this. And it still doesn't work. What am I doing wrong? What I'm doing wrong is I'm actually not calling this particular value. What I'm saying is I have the ID, but something's wrong with my code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to be the ID. And why am I doing that? I'm doing that because that means that I'm going to pass button 0, 1. It's going to go to the value of the ID is now set to button 0, 1. I'm going to have let my button equals document.getElement by ID button 0, 1, alert my message, and then console.log my button.name. So let's see if this works. It did not work. Let's find out. Let's see why that is not working. So I'm going to actually put this for all of them. Two, 0, 3. See if this made a difference because now I have a uniform. I have a uniform for this. Still not working. That is so very interesting. So let's put some code in here and figure out what's going on. So let's do a console.log the ID. And let's get rid of this alert message just because it's being a pain in the butt. All right, so let's go ahead and try this. Button 1 worked, but then the actual value of my button.name didn't work. And do you know why my button.name didn't work? I'm so dumb. Why didn't this work? Because we deleted the word name. So instead what I might do is I could actually put .id. Button 0, 1, button 0, 1, button 0, 2, button 0, 2, buttons. Okay, great. So that's now working. It's really kind of kludgy for what we're doing here. So I want to show you one more interesting thing about buttons and this kind of stuff. So I'm going to do something that is a little weird, and I'm going to get rid of this one. No, I'm actually not. Not sure what I'm going to do. My button dot name. I know I just deleted all the names, but that's okay. And like I said, you don't have to be following along exactly. Name equals Bob. Name equals Alice. And name equals Charlie. All right. So let's go ahead and run this. Button 1, the ID. Its name is Bob. It's Alice. Okay, cool. Charlie. All right. So I now have this whole thing going on with, and it's working. Like, it's getting those values. That's great. The ID is fine too for the actual homework assignment. What can I do that makes this even easier? Well, I can make it so that when I click on the button and it calls the function, instead of putting a hard-coded name in here, can actually put what button clicked it, or what button is calling that function. So it's like, hey, I'm the one calling that function. But I think I'm going to save that for later in the semester, because this seems like this is going to work for us for what we need to do right now. So it's okay. Yeah, so that's working. So how do we do this whole thing where we save the last button and then print out what the current button is that was pressed? All right, so what I want to do is I want to do something that earlier didn't work. So let's give it a try again. I'm going to set this global variable to be let previous button equal null. Remember, because that means nothing. And I'm going to let current button equal null. So what I'm going to do is, now that I have these set, what I want to do is I want to, when you click on a button, what do I want to do? I want to set the name of the previous button to be what the current button was, and then the current button to whatever button was clicked. Get it? So logically, we're moving value from one to the other. So what I'm going to do, and the first time we run this, it's not going to work very well, because the first value will be null for both of them, and that's understandable, and I get that. All right, so basically what happens is when this function is called, I'm going to want to shuffle the values around. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to first say that as soon as it runs, set the previous button is equal to the current button, and then set the current button which is going to be equal to my button name. Okay, so this happens a lot in programming. We shift values back and forth. Like one becomes a holder, and we set it first, then we go ahead and set the other value, so we know like what the last thing was. If you think through like the undo features that's what's kind of happening is the previous thing that happened in your computer is being stored, and you can go back and it's there. So I'm going to try and run this. I'm assuming it's going to just fail in general, but let's see. I'm hoping it's not. Okay. There's no failure yet. That's good. I also didn't do anything with my variables yet. So what I should really do now is change this phrase from my button name to using the previous and current button variables. But how do we put variables together? That is called concatenation, and we'll talk about that with strings, but I'm going to do a demo of it right now for you. The previous button was, and you then put a plus, and then you put the name, so you put your string, and you put a plus, and then you put your variable, so in this case is prev button, and you put another plus, and you put another, start another string, and you put a period just so it looks real. The current button is space plus current button. Okay, hit that. Now let's see how this works. This could work, this could not work. The previous button was null, the current button is Bob. Okay, that's believable. Let's do 3. This should be what? The current button was Bob, the current button is Charlie. Or the previous button is Bob, the current button is Charlie. Okay. 2. The previous button was Charlie, the current button is Alice. Do it a bunch of times, you get the previous button was Alice, the current button is Alice, right? Because I hit it so many times. It just is the same value over and over again. The previous button was Alice, the current button is Bob. And I think I'm hidden behind that, so sorry about that. But that is how you can do that. Again, that flip-flop, for lack of a better word, is something that really does happen a lot in programming, especially with strings, especially with any type of like user-entered value, especially when you're sort of like watching the status of something or watching a value that changes. You know, perhaps you are looking at the weather and you're seeing if the temperature has gone up or down. How do you know? Well, you look at the previous time the temperature was kept and you look at the current temperature, and whatever the current temperature is becomes the previous on the next cycle. And you can see if is it going in a positive direction? Is it getting warmer out or is it getting colder out? That kind of thing. So this is really, this is how you do this is how you're going to do our homework. You know, this is got everything, and then the upload is on a different video. I will see you in class to go over the skills. Like I said, you just have to apply these to the existing page. And if I didn't mention it, the page that I added to let me click on this. The page that I added to here is a zip file. You do need to unzip that and put that into your folder. The reason you need to unzip that is because for whatever reason, I couldn't download an HTML file. I could only download it as a zip and unzip it. If you need help with the zipping or unzipping files, send me an email before class. On a Mac, it's just a matter of double clicking. On Windows, you actually have to right click on it and pick extract here, and then it'll come out and you can move it into the proper folder that you're using for this particular week. All right, that's it. I hope you have good luck with this. I hope you have a good time. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email or give me a call at my office. Otherwise, we'll talk to you on Wednesday night.